How Rousseau inspired the French Revolution. Once upon a time in a land of croissants and unyielding monarchs, there emerged an enlightened thinker whose ideas simmered and bubbled into a revolutionary stew. Number 5. Passionate Virtue and Republic Sandwiches. Rousseau, much like a master chef in philosophical kitchens, whipped up a zesty dish called civic virtue that helped whet revolutionary appetites. This revolutionary recipe emphasized a tasty focus on morality and unity within the Republic. He argued that citizens should be like carefully chosen ingredients in a splendid sandwich, with each layer representing shared values and civic responsibility. The flavor of his ideas was so enticing that revolutionaries soon began adopting his recipe to season their calls to action. This concept of civic virtue began to inspire the fledgling republic, as it aspired to serve a hearty plate of democratic ideals with a side of equality, seasoning a fervor for change beyond the old crusty monarchies. Number 4. Power for the people, hold the monarch. At a time when divine right was the favorite dessert of monarchies, Rousseau boldly suggested a new taste: popular sovereignty, a sweet treat for the people rather than a select few at the king's table. The idea was simple yet revolutionary. Political power should stem not from a golden crown perched on royal heads but from the very people who gathered crumbs from the table. This was a feast where every citizen had a seat, each one holding a fork with which they could carve out a state's true direction. By turning the traditional power pastry on its head, Rousseau served not only as a recipe for new dishes of governance but also fueled the fires of rebellion against stale autocratic pies. Number 3. Equality on a baguette. Rousseau's philosophy suggested that all men are equal, glamorizing this idea as if equality was the freshest French loaf straight out of the baker's oven. This notion was a delight to revolutionaries hungry for change and deeply unsatisfied with the old menu of social hierarchy. By arguing that social inequalities are products of corrupt institutions rather than inherent differences among people, Rousseau appealed to those fed up with playing second fiddle. The idea planted the seed that society should bite into a fresh agenda where distinctions weren't sliced and served based on birthright, but measured by merits, ushering in a taste for egalitarian ideals that became a staple of revolutionary cuisine. Number 2. Storming the intellectual Bastille. Rousseau's works, particularly his revolutionary rhetoric, served as a conceptual battering ram against the citadels of entrenched aristocratic knowledge. His pen concocted a word storm that soaked the powdered wigs of the intellectual elite, knocking over the cobwebbed shells of ideas like a revolutionary deluge. His prose stirred minds like heated debates in a bustling cafe, prompting many to reconsider the dusty old tones of governance and society. Rousseau essentially stormed the intellectual Bastille of his time, unlocking new ways of thinking and championing democracy and liberty, ingredients long overdue for a spot on the French intellectual menu. Number 1. The social contract sparkle. For Rousseau, the pen was indeed mightier than the sword. It only needed a spark to start the revolutionary bonfire. His influential treatise, The Social Contract, was both the match and the powder keg. With lines that inspired like a well-timed quip or an electrifying opera, Rousseau's work argued for new pathways of political association, ones based on the general will rather than sovereign decree. This guiding light promised to illuminate the path to royalties of liberty and fraternity, enticing revolutionaries eager for change. His vision of a society that functioned as a cohesive ensemble rather than a disjointed orchestra struck chords that reverberated long past his final act, inspiring notes of rebellion throughout the French Revolution. And so, with a quill and an architectural vision of society, Rousseau helped lay the revolutionary groundwork for a France that sought liberty, equality, and fraternity. Much like a skilled conductor, he orchestrated a cacophony of ideas into a fine-tuned symphony that played throughout history, inspiring change and movements for years to come. As France danced to the revolutionary rhythm, Rousseau's opus left a legacy as inspiring as a nap in a sunlit Parisian park. May his spirit continue to whisper ideas of freedom in readers' ears like a sweet breeze blowing through the alleys of history. Au revoir and vive la revolution.